Welcome to Verify This, a podcast brought to you by Condatis. We deliver bespoke identity and access management solutions leveraging the Microsoft Entra product family. Our solutions are designed to simplify onboarding, enhance security, and boost business efficiency for clients globally. Throughout the series, we'll connect with leading experts across the industry to bring you insight on all things digital identity. Hear about trending issues, lessons learned, and priorities for the future within identity verification and authentication.
Identity, if done properly, can really help in those situations of simplifying the overall infrastructure, making it more secure, but also allowing you to still use all your specialist systems. What about biometrics? What about robotics? What about Internet of Things? What about artificial intelligence? So it's an exciting place to be at the moment.
I'm your host, Lucy McNeil, and Product Marketing Lead at Condatis. Today, we're joined by Chief Product Officer, Alasdair Murray. Alasdair has 20 years of experience working with organisations to deliver software solutions that tackle identity and security challenges in government, health, education, and private enterprises, emphasising user experience where mobility and privacy are critical. Alasdair is currently working to build products that help organisations disrupt the centralised identity paradigm by moving the control of data into the hands of users through decentralized, verifiable credentials. Welcome, Alasdair.
Hi, Lucy. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here today.
We're very glad to have you on our second episode. So today we're talking about digital identity and what the future holds. And in our last episode, we discussed the strides that had been made across the identity and access management field to date and what that meant for the hospitality sector specifically. So we're going to delve into how organizations might address the challenges faced with current standards as a whole and what the new era of digital identity looks like. So if we think about organizations in a general sense, leaders are always looking at ways to drive revenue, maximize sales, minimize costs, 100 plus ROI, and yet perhaps many could be looking in the wrong places and underestimating the value that the right digital identity strategy might have on a company's overall success. Is that something you would agree with?
Definitely. I think one of the things organizations have really found difficult in the past is determining what the security and business benefits are of identity and access management within their organisation. And I think what we're seeing, and we at Condatis see all the time now, is the realisation that identity is a lot wider than just security and risk management. And what that really means is that businesses can really start to focus on how they improve experiences for their users, how they can cut costs. So, for instance, how can you cut support desk costs by automating or making self-service features available? And as Gillian was talking about in the last episode of the podcast, about how do you make users' experiences better? So, in the case of travel and hospitality, as Gillian was talking about, but that is applicable across all sorts of different verticals. And you can really start to map core company or enterprise benefits to changes that you make in your identity infrastructure. And that we see is gaining more and more momentum with organizations and really understanding that. So we see more and more, it's not just the security and risk management people that we talk to, we're talking to people in HR, we're talking to people in education, admissions, tutors, the whole organization is now is starting to wake up to the benefits of that identity can bring to them in what they do day to day.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the first part of that is establishing where the issues are. So if we think about, we talk a lot about an identity and access management. The most straightforward way to understand it is use cases, right? And use cases are easily derived from business problems. I mentioned in my previous episode with Gillian, as you mentioned, that we work with a whole host of different sectors from hospitality to government, higher education, and certainly each can be very unique in terms of their particular use cases. When it comes to a more holistic view, in your experience and having been in conversations and in the room with different industries and different stakeholders, are there reoccurring challenges or common themes in terms of gaps within identity and access management across the board that keep coming up?
For sure, I think we do. There is definitely a set of challenges that are probably map across all of the sort of the sectors that people that we talk to in different types of organisations. So I think you could probably summarise them into four high level ones. Obviously, there's probably lots more, but I think the first would be efficiency and security. So what this is all about is, how do people join your organisation, move within your organisation, and then leave your organisation? And a lot of people call this joiner, mover, leaver. So it's about how do you efficiently and securely onboard people to your organisations, set them up within your systems so that they get access to the right tools that they need, but only the tools that they need, and not other things. And then when they move, how do you track to make sure that you're giving them access to new things, but also taking away access to things that they don't need anymore? And then when they leave, how do you make sure that you secure your organisation so that they no longer have any access? So that is the first one, and that is an important one, and we see that across the use cases that we work on. So we've seen that in education with people like Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, or in industry with Sellafield nuclear reprocessing plant, or with the NHS in terms of how they onboard and move their staff around the different parts of the NHS in the United Kingdom. So that is something that is sort of core and fundamental to a lot of the projects that we work on. I think the second area that we see where clients, where identity can really help, is a lot of the clients that we deal with have very complicated and evolving technology landscapes that they're dealing with in their organizations. So how does that happen? So organizations grow organically. They're adding technology at different times, so they have different ages, legacy systems, new systems. They're merging with other organizations, they're demerging. There's new compliance regulations that they have to that they have to meet, and there's also this, in a lot of verticals, there are specialist software applications that are needed to run those businesses. That creates a really complicated, for CIOs and sort of IT management and risk management and security people. That creates that's a large attack surface that potentially is susceptible to people coming in and trying to steal data and stuff. And it creates quite a complicated environment for them to work. And identity, if done properly, can really help in those situations of simplifying the overall infrastructure, making it more secure, but also allowing you to still use all your specialist systems. So that's the second one that we see a lot of. I think thirdly is a big challenge that people have is they really want to improve the services and the user journeys that they offer. But how do they do that? And one of the main stumbling blocks they have is around how do they move data across organizational boundaries. So how do they share data with partners? How do they get the data they need and able to onboard people into their organizations? But also with that is, how do they know how much of that data to trust? So, if you're in the financial sector, it's very important that you understand how much trust you place in data that you're receiving, or if you're wanting to get access to secure services, are we really sure that the person who is arriving at our digital front door is the person who they say they are? So trust and the movement of data, third big area that we talk to clients about a lot. And I think the fourth is, so those three are all around really businesses and organizations and how they operate. But from a user perspective, what we're seeing is a lot more interest in terms of transparency and how data is being shared and how data is being processed by different people as they interact with them. We've seen a lot of bad things happening in terms of data, leakages, data being processed when people don't realise that's what's going on. So there is a great deal of focus right now in terms of how do we offer more transparency and how do we work towards better data privacy. And that, I think, probably are the four things that we see quite a lot of across the projects that we work on.
Yeah, and that last piece that you mentioned definitely came up in the discussion we had about hospitality, where their industry specifically, the focus is, of course, security, but the experience that they're kind of offering their direct customers, which is travelers. But in I guess you could argue fairly recent years, people, as you mentioned, the demand for that transparency has only grown, and that's been because there's been the visibility of actually how often have these leaks happened, and we maybe as consumers have had no idea that our data has gone X, Y, and Z, and you hear it on the radio. I mean, at the moment there's a TV ad and a radio that's mimicking that. I broke my phone, mum, send me money, and so definitely there's a massive push about people being more aware about who and where they're sharing their data. So it's the last point you mentioned, but definitely a very vital one. If we think about the new era of digital identity, we're talking about let's unlock where it's going. What does the future look like? There's been more and more talk from particular industry bodies, Gartner is one, about trying to leverage and take advantage of new technology. Now, what they mention might be in 5, 10, 20 years from now, but they're definitely, they're already talking about it now, and trying to encourage people to make the most of that and leverage new technology. What are your thoughts on this? What could organizations gain from looking to do more of that?
Yeah, so at Condatis, we've been working with decentralization, or thinking about decentralization and the concepts around it, for over 5 years now. So we've been in identity as an organization for over 10 years, and for 5 of those years, we've been looking at decentralization. And the core concepts that really are attractive to decentralization, to tackle some of the things that we've been talking about just a minute ago, is that with decentralization, you really start to enable better data transfer between organizations. So you're able to share data better. You're able to simplify this complex IT sort of infrastructure or environment or ecosystem that you're working in, and you're offering transparency, and that's all done securely. Now, what people will say is, well, what is decentralization? So decentralization is the whole concept that at the moment, we're in a very centralized world, which means that we have large databases held by everyone that we come into contact with in the digital world that holds data about you. So that means that there is copies of data about you spread, around the internet. And really what decentralization is about flipping that on its head and saying, okay, that's not great, because what it means is there's lots of data that's out there about you that could be quite sensitive data about you, and it's in lots of places that could be accessed when you don't want it to be accessed. And this becomes honeypots for like attackers and stuff like that. So how about if we flip it on its head? And some people in the industry talk about it like this. They say you make the person the network. So the person is the key part of the process, and they hold all of their data securely in digital wallets that they then share with different organizations as they come into contact with them, in the digital world. So decentralization tackles all of these problems around security and efficiency, and how do we make data transfer better and more efficient and all of this sort of stuff. But it also, within that, there are concepts around, well, how do we define how much trust we put in different types of data? And this is about forming trust ecosystems or trust frameworks. And we say we trust data from government. So, for instance, passport data or driving license data or something like that. High levels of trust, like that's being checked and it's being verified at government level. But data from a sort of an unknown training course that nobody's ever heard of, perhaps we don't trust that as much. So if you're turning up at a job, you trust the fact that that somebody has they have a good driving license, that their name and their address. But if they've got a training certificate from something that's quite untrustworthy, you may not want to let them loose on a JCB on a building site or something like that. So decentralization has lots of different benefits. What I would say is with decentralization is, in our view at Condatis, it's all about evolution of technology, not revolution. So you'll hear a lot in the press about these new technologies. We would really certainly come from the point of view that you combine these technologies rather than replacing everything you've got today. We are going to evolve, the infrastructure and the IT systems that people have, and decentralized identity lends itself very well to that because it offers a glue between all of the different systems within the ecosystem that you have already, without you having to basically replace everything, but gives you all these advantages about data transfer, security, transparency, and trust of the data that you receive. So yeah, decentralization we certainly think is coming. Gartner and other industry analysts, as you said, Lucy, certainly think that this is coming in the next few years. And what we're doing at the moment is we're helping clients to understand how that can fit into their strategy going forward, so that they can take advantage of some of these new technologies as they come to market.
I think that's probably a really valuable thing to call out, in the discussion of new tech in digital identity, and almost, not having a reluctance towards it and seeing it as reinventing the wheel, as you mentioned. It's let's look at what's already there. We've come this far with this tech. It's clearly valuable. What's the new tech that's on offer that can integrate with that and take it a step higher? You mentioned trust ecosystems. I think, there could be a whole single episode dedicated to that because there's so much to consider, but it definitely resonates with what Gillian and I were talking about in the Seamless Traveller Experience discussion about the scale at which you would need to trust somebody, and where that could vary from, as you mentioned, an unknown credential of a skill or a course, all the way up to your identity and validating, in terms of a government perspective or a legal perspective. So yeah, we could talk at length about that, and hopefully we can do such. On that, in this kind of new way of identity data exchange, based on how we understand it and how it's operated at present, and or could do in the future, and particularly in the form of decentralized technology, what teething issues could we see in the wake of this shift and maybe almost anticipate or, prepare for?
Yeah, so with emerging technologies, and as you're highlighting, I've been sort of dealing in this area for like 20 years, and I think I've seen it multiple times with emerging technologies, is, it's uncertain, like in terms of where the technologies are going, how they're going to be specified. So that puts a lot of doubt in people's minds. And what that also does, though, and we see this a lot, and it's a discussion we have frequently with customers, is they like the technology, they like what it's going to give them. But with all of this new technology out there, is what one of our clients calls it their expanding edge of their organization, which is how do we deal with all of that technology? So we have all these different things going on. We're trying to basically use the latest technologies, whether it's biometrics, whether it's, artificial intelligence, whether it's the Internet of Things, whether it's, all of these different things to improve the services that they have. But that is constantly expanding what they have to deal with as an IT organization within their organization, both from a security perspective, but also how do they develop and deploy the services that they want to provide when all of this is changing around them. And I think the other thing that we see a lot with clients is, and this is happening as the importance of identity becomes more and more core to the activities of organizations, is that there is no one solution that solves everything. So you have to have a way of basically threading together different software, different specifications, different technologies to solve your complicated problems. I mean, the organizations we deal with at enterprise level have very complicated and difficult problems that they want to solve, but the benefits of doing it are huge. So those are sort of put doubts in people's minds, I think, from a usability perspective of the technology itself. I think also, obviously, as I mentioned, within the actual technology teams themselves, there's obviously, how do you build those skills to do all of those things? How do you do all of this stuff and bring it to market quickly? Because what you want to do is you want to decide that this is a route for you. You've got your business metrics that you want to improve, whether it's cost, risk, time, whatever it is. But how do you do that quickly? And how do you do that quickly with new technology, which you may not have skills in? And then how do you make sure that all works together? So how do you make sure, as I mentioned before, you have specialist systems, you have an ecosystem that with data and with specialist systems in it that you still want to use. How do you bring all of that together? And that's, I think, the things that play on people's mind with any new technology, and especially around identity, where identity is so core and critical to how organisations work and operate.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned existing systems, and I think what's interesting is it's, as mentioned by yourself, it's not one size fits all, and all these elements can actually weave in together and not just explicitly identity. Other aspects and solutions out there can fit in nicely with identity, and maybe there's the assumption that that's not possible. It's this does this, that does that, there goes there, when in fact all these three elements could work together to create an even more efficient solution. And that's where I guess it's that tailored piece and integration with one another. So I guess it's these could be seen to be teething issues, but at the end of the day, there are people and skill sets out there to help work together to sort of bring these together and move forward into this new sort of era of digital identity.
Sure, and that's, I think, at our core at Condatis, that's our business. So, like, if you were thinking about three things that sort of exemplify what we do, or the three main things that we do to help organisations who want to make these improvements, who want to take advantage of these new technologies, is we as a company are unashamedly an Entra house. And the reason we are using Entra and that we recommend Entra to our clients is that Microsoft Entra is recognised by Gartner, Forrester, and other analyst companies as market leaders in terms of identity and access management. What does that mean? That means that we're building like on the shoulders of giants. So Microsoft spends billions in terms of security on their cloud infrastructure of Azure. They are heavily investing in decentralized identity. So, their product Entra Verified ID. They have internal identity, external identity, identity governance, permissions management. So we have a full range of tools based on a highly scalable, highly performant, secure cloud infrastructure that we can use with organizations. And I think the other important thing to point out with using Entra or Microsoft Entra is that organizations, like a vast majority of organizations, already have licensing with Microsoft. Like, you have these tools as part of your licensing already. So, use the tools that you have. So you don't need to go out and source, separate or new software packages or from other vendors. But use the Microsoft stuff that you already have licensed. It's there. We can help you to use that, and we can help you to get, the most out of your Microsoft licensing. I think the second thing that we can do at Condatis does is we are very much focused on those business problems. So we listen to the business problems first. What is it that your business is trying to achieve? And then we can help you to build those tailored solutions to solve those business problems. And I think the third thing is that, like, we recognise this problem of this expanding edge, as I talked about earlier, is there is all of these different specifications, technologies from different verticals that you want to interact with to improve your processes and your services. But how do you glue all of those together? How do you make them work together? How do you do that securely and quickly? So Condatis, over the last 3 years, we've been investing in building our own intellectual property. It's called the Condatis Credential Gateway. And that is a decentralized tool chain or engineering platform that gives you a leg up or a quick start to integrating all of these services and technologies that you want to use with the Microsoft Entra Stack and Microsoft Entra Verified ID. So, what we're trying to do is make it as quick and easy for your teams to get the benefits out of the latest technologies that are out there in the market. And that makes an exciting space to be, because we are always being asked by clients, as they realise what benefits this brings them, what about different technologies? What about biometrics? What about robotics? What about Internet of Things? What about artificial intelligence? So it's an exciting place to be at the moment.
Yeah, it's definitely, you can sense the passion of this sort of where this is going, I guess, based on your experience and everything sort of you've progressed through as it's evolved. I was going to say this might be a simple question, but it also might not. It could be, we could maybe be here for hours, but what excites you about the future of digital identity?
So what's exciting, I think, is what we've been talking about, what I've been talking about throughout this podcast, is the realization that if you establish good digital identity, it's not just about logging onto websites or changing your password on a website. It's about the experiences that you can start to build, and those are both physical and digital. So we see clients that are talking about, well, if we have a good digital identity, how could that interact with buildings? So if when I go into a building, how can my identity be used to tailor my experience when I'm in a building? Or how can my identity be used to tailor my experience as I travel? And on the flip side of that, for businesses, how do we remove some of the sort of the time and effort that it takes to give people those experiences? So just two examples, I guess. What the work we did with the NHS, it was taking an NHS health board in NHS England 2 weeks to onboard new clinical staff. That's 2 weeks when they're not really working. They haven't got all their systems. They're not provisioned. They haven't done all their sort of identity checks, all of that sort of thing. What happens if you improve that and you take that down to 5 minutes? What does that mean for the member of staff? What does it mean for the care that the hospital can provide? We've done that. We did that we've done that with our partners, to start looking at these solutions that make real world differences to businesses or students. For instance, take universities. So we worked with our MIT University in Australia, and that's the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. It would take them multiple weeks after a student had matriculated into the university to get them on all the systems, to get them, access to the library and whatever else that they're trying to do. Again, what happens if we can collapse that to 5-10 minutes? These are significant, benefits that you can give people. Or, as I'm sure Gillian was talking about in the last podcast, tailored experience when you arrive at a hotel. I'm a vegetarian. I have a feather allergy. What happens if the hotel knows all of that stuff about you already as you arrive? You're getting a tailored, better experience, and you're doing that securely and transparently. That's exciting stuff. I mean, it's changes how we interact with the digital world and the physical world, which is exciting to be part of.
I suppose if you think back to maybe 20 years ago and or back to the future, and what does 2022 2023, 2024, what does the world look like? And could get to a point where you walk to a door, biometric scans your eye, and it opens and lets you in, and there's your access. It's becoming more and more of a reality, so it is exciting.
I mean, what's very interesting is I've been lucky enough to live through that. So at the start of my career, I was helping to bring mobile phones into being, and then it was bank cards, chip and pin bank cards, and it was biometric passports. Now it's cloud-based identity. So it's amazing how identity is a common thread through things that actually you don't realise it's quite core to a lot of the things that you do and that you interact with. And now, obviously, with the latest technologies, biometrics, artificial intelligence, it's accelerating, and it continues to be exciting, and new opportunities and new things that you can do with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. As I say, that's all the time we have. We could talk about it forever. Don't even get us started on artificial intelligence. It'll become a short monologue novel. Yes, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us about unlocking the future of digital identity. It's a really exciting topic. Like our last episode, if anyone has any questions for Alasdair, please do reach out via LinkedIn or send our team an email at info@condatus.com. We hope you enjoyed listening into episode 2 today, and stay tuned for more exciting discussions as we verify this.